All right, everybody. How you doing? So, how many of you know what an irrational fear is? I used to think that irrational fears were just as it sounds, any fear that is irrational to have. But recently, while doing a bit of research for this video, I found that actually phobias are irrational fears, which makes sense to me. But at the same time, it seems that anything that is an irrational fear is a phobia. Those two things seem to be interchangeable, they are one and the same. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me because what I consider to be irrational fears now seem to, well, just not be that. For example, one of my irrational fears was planes crashing through my home while I'm at home. This is a fear that I guess developed back when I saw Danny Darko. It was something that was just in my head, and then after learning that it was a real thing, something that actually does happen, well, it became a fear of mine. Also, lightning striking my car while driving in a storm. That's another fear that I've had. And while that seems to be more rare than lightning striking people, it was still something that I kind of worried about from time to time. But the thing is, the difference between what I fear and actual irrational fears and phobias is that, well, these aren't crippling fears for me. Planes crashing through my home, they don't prevent me from doing anything. As a matter of fact, whenever I hear a plane overhead, I do from time to time think, oh, that could be heading for my home. But it's never anything that freaks me out or causes me to do anything out of the ordinary. I might worry a little bit, but for the most part, I just continue doing what I'm doing, whether it's cooking or eating or sleeping. Anyway, lightning striking my car, it's not something that really stops me from driving, and a lot of times I still will go out during a storm to drive wherever I need to go. And then I learned that, well, lightning does strike cars, but the metal case in the cars protect the people inside. So it's not even really that big of a deal in and of itself. Originally, I wanted to ask, what were your irrational fears? Then I wanted to give you 5 examples of my irrational fears. The first 2 I already gave you, and then I wanted to go on to mention how I also had a irrational fear of people hiding in my home without me knowing, or the world losing gravity. Those 2 are pretty crazy. It's really weird though now because again, those 2 are not fears that I find to be crippling, so I'm kind of finding it hard to call them irrational fears, despite the fact that, again, they do seem a bit irrational to have. People hiding in other people's homes without them knowing is something that has happened a few times. But the world losing gravity, that's just crazy. There's no experience for that. But regardless of which, those are things that I think about from time to time, and the thought of them kind of scare me. But I guess the thought of something being scary and actually being paralyzed by it are 2 different things. There are even some phobias which, despite the fact that by definition they are irrational, we kind of accept as a bit rational. Like arachnophobia or ophidiophobia, the fear of spiders and snakes, respectively. Or the even more common cynophobia, which is the fear of dogs. So it's really weird to think about it when you think about these phobias that are more accepted despite the fact that they are irrational by definition. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about phobias and, well, irrational fears specifically is because of the main topic of this video. And I really want to preference this because of how I view the footage. This is something that to me is more disturbing than anything I've really seen on the internet. I've seen a lot of gruesome things, and for the most part, it hasn't really changed me. I mean, I've seen dead bodies, I've seen, gross lacerations, and yet despite that fact, it's never really bothered me. This video, it's not really graphic at all, but at the same time, to me personally, it's very disturbing. And you might have seen it because it's a video that went viral within the past month. So let me talk about it. January 16th, 2023. A man in Milwaukee walks up to the home of a woman living with her daughter and two grandchildren. He rings the doorbell and he waits a while. He begins counting his money while he waits, and then he waits a little bit longer. After not getting a response to his initial ring, he rings the doorbell one more time. He waits a little bit longer. He looks around. And after not getting a response to his second ring, he walks off the porch. He begins to leave the yard, and then something happens. This was all caught on a doorbell camera. So I'm going to show you the footage. The fifth irrational fear that I had was someone waiting to ambush me after knocking on my door. So like I said, you've probably seen this video before. It's a viral video. It went viral when it was uploaded, and obviously it's because of how crazy and insane this is. I learned about it like a week or two ago on Tizzy's TikTok page. Now, the woman and the children, they were completely fine. They had just gone upstairs for a nap right before the man came. He rang the doorbell and nobody in the home heard it because the children were asleep and the mother was cleaning and she had AirPods in her ears. And then he began to shoot through the home. That's when the daughter woke up. The daughter woke up and ran to the mother to let her know that she had heard gunshots. So the mother checks her Ring doorbell to see what had gone on the camera, and that's when she finds that the man had shot through her home. This disturbs her, as this probably would anyone, so much so that she can no longer live in that home, and she is now looking to move, unfortunately, because she's probably lived there for a good amount of time and previously had no intentions on moving. There was no reason given. That's the thing that really disturbs me. And I know that there's no good reason for this, but for me, I don't entirely look for good reasons. I would like to know what's going on behind in the heads of people like this from time to time. What did you think was going on? My first thought was maybe he got the home confused and maybe he thought that somebody else was living there or something like that. That doesn't make it okay again, but like at the very least, I don't know, it makes it seem not so random. But it is. It was random. His name is Harold Ghibellini. Before he committed this crime a few years ago, he went to a Subway to apply for a job. Later that same day, he came back with a machete to rob the place. So he has a history of crime. He's out on bail right now and has been released on level 5 supervision. I have no idea what that means. I looked it up as much as possible, but the most I could get was that it's just in Milwaukee the highest supervision for the worst offenders when they're expected to jump bail or something like that. If he is convicted of these crimes, he could be facing 80 years in jail. So the reason I wanted to talk about this wasn't because I wanted to spread awareness to this. I mean, obviously not. My channel is nowhere near big enough. But I just wanted to talk about this because irrational fears is something that I've thought about a lot. I thought about my own irrational fears and how kind of funny they are. But not this one. The whole thing with me worrying about somebody waiting to ambush me, that's something that has actually kind of affected my life, whereas the other fears, the ridiculous fears that I've had, have not. A lot of times whenever somebody knocks at my door, I'll run up to the door and I'll just kind of watch them and kind of see what they're about. If they don't seem like anybody who I know or anybody who I want to deal with, I obviously won't deal with them, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes I actually worry about whether or not, I could open the door and they'll pull out a gun or something like that, and then that's just me. There have even been times where I've heard a knock at the door and then I've seen nobody there. I don't know what they're doing, but for me, that's just an absolute no, as it should be for anybody. But then it gets really bad when I get a notification on my phone letting me know that my Uber driver has dropped off my food, and I wait a while. Because in my head, if I wait long enough, just in case this Uber driver is on some foul shit and they're waiting to ambush me, well, hopefully they'll get bored and then they'll go away. I never do it long enough for my food to get cold, so it's never been a detriment to me in any way. It's never really hindered any part of my life, but at the same time, it's something that I do. And it does seem a little bit ridiculous, especially when taking into consideration that, the Uber drivers probably aren't on that time. They probably don't have the time to do that. They're just trying to make their money. But this video, it kind of creates a new irrational fear in me. This isn't something that's normal, and that's why the video went viral. I don't think anybody's ever seen anything like this before. It's nothing to do with gangs. It has nothing to do with revenge or anything like that. As far as we know, this lady has no idea who this guy is, and more than likely the guy doesn't know who she is either. It was more than likely just a random house that he picked, and that's it. He just decided to shoot up the house. As a matter of fact, he could have been at other houses. This was the last one, and he just got tired of knocking on doors and decided to shoot through it. It doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter is that this was way too random. That very easily could have been me or anybody. If any of them had heard the doorbell, they could have gotten up, checked the door, and they could have been checking the door at the wrong time. Because like I said before, that's something that I do a lot, where I'll just creep up to the door. Sometimes I take my time. Sometimes, I don't know. But that's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to talk about this for a little bit. I saw it, and it just kind of bothered me a little bit. Anyway, I guess I'll catch y'all later, and definitely in something that's not going to be as morbid or as, I don't know, down. All right, I'll catch y'all later.